Hello, my name's CJ. Welcome to the ICT Metroist, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming sales tax referendum that the City of Wichita just put up on the upcoming March ballot. We're going to be talking about what's in this bill, how it affects you, and my opinions on this bill. So just kind of some background, the group that put this bill together and proposed it to the City Council was the nonprofit group Wichita Forward, a coalition of business and community leaders that wanted to advocate for specific policies to push our city forward. And the specific policy that they decided to present to the City Council was a 1% sales tax. We'll go into exactly what that is here a little later, but before you do that, make sure to give this video a like, share it on Facebook and all your other social media, and subscribe to this channel for future Wichita news and updates about local politics, governance, and things that might be related to you. So really, before we get into it, let's actually talk about what a sales tax is. So a sales tax is what it kind of sounds like. Basically, the idea here is that at the point of sale, when you purchase a good, you pay a certain Yes? Do you have something to say on the sales tax? You heard it here first, folks. Now, a sales tax is going to be a tax where, at the point of sale, you purchase a good or service, and you are taxed on the value of that good. So a 1% sales tax means that for every $100 of groceries that you buy, you will be paying $1 extra in sales tax. Another thing to note about sales tax is that it is a regressive tax, meaning the lower your income, the higher share of that income you're paying towards the sales tax. And how does that work exactly? The idea here is that lower income people are forced to pay almost all of their income on things like groceries, rent, on things like medical supplies, and basically anything else of necessity. So most low income people aren't able to really save their money. They have to spend all of it. Thereby, all of their income is going to be subject to that 1% sales tax. So if they spend 100% of their income, 1% of that income went to the sales tax. If you compare that to someone who is higher income, they might spend 40% of their income and save 60%. Only that 40% is going to be subject to the sales tax. So at a 1% sales tax, someone who's high income only has to pay 0.4% of their income towards that sales tax. That's much less than the 1% that someone who is lower income has to pay. Again, just because lower income people have to spend all of their money just to meet the basic necessities of life. With the basics out of the way, let's actually move into the proposal. Reading from their website, the proposal says that Wichita Forward is charting a new course. They invite the community to join in an effort to advance a 1-cent sales tax referendum sunsetting or expiring after 7 years. The sales tax and all proposed projects it accomplishes would be overseen by an independent citizen oversight committee. The need for investment. The City of Wichita faces growing challenges that require dedicated new revenue streams. Public safety. The Wichita Police Department, WPD, and Wichita Fire Department, WFD, require investment in technology, facilities, and training to meet rising service demands and address community safety concerns effectively. Homelessness. Point-in-time counts show an increasing number of people experiencing homelessness. The annual economic impact of homelessness in Wichita/Sedgwick County is conservatively estimated at over $20 million, straining public resources through the Wichita Police Department, code enforcement, healthcare, and nonprofits, among other services. Project 1, building a safe and resilient community, $375 million. Of that, public safety would get $225 million, and they say that the sales tax investment would cover all scheduled capital improvement projects and provide resources for existing and new initiatives. Homelessness and housing would receive $150 million. The sales tax investment would cover capital improvements and permanently fund the multi-agency center, alleviating over $5 million in annual city budget costs. This includes investments in affordable housing and diversion as preventative measures to reduce homelessness overall. Project 2, revitalization of Century 2 and convention space complexes, $250 million. To revitalize Century 2 is going to cost $25 million. And for the other convention spaces would require another $225 million. Project 3, property tax relief, $150 million. This bill would dedicate $21 million per year for immediate property tax alleviation, accounting for a 12% relief annually through 2033. Project 4, education and the arts new performing arts facility, $75 million. The bill would give $75 million to develop a public-private partnership to build a new performing arts center in downtown Wichita, including $75 to $100 million in private philanthropy and investments. Oversight and accountability. Citizen oversight committees are a vital mechanism used by cities to ensure transparency and accountability for voter-approved sales tax measures. Establishing this committee as a condition of the ballot measure acts as a promise to voters that funds will be spent strictly as defined in the proposal. Based on best practices identified in research of similar citizen oversight committees, Wichita Forward recommends the city incorporate the following standard features. 1. Independence. Members must not be current city employees or elected officials, with exceptions only for specific union representatives if deemed necessary. 2. Limited scope. The committee should not decide which projects to fund. Their mandate is to verify the funded projects match the voter-approved list. 3. Sunset clause. The committee structure should be tied to the duration of the tax, dissolving automatically if the tax expires. 4. Annual audit. The committee's primary tool for accountability should be the review and presentation of an independent financial audit to the public and city council. And that's the proposal that Wichita Forward is putting forth. All right, so now that we've gone over the bill, I want to give you some of my opinions on the bill, and maybe that will help kind of enlighten whether or not you should vote for or against this bill. Starting off, I am not going to vote for the bill. I'm going to vote against this bill as it stands. Now we'll go into each one of the projects one by one, and then we'll go into some other things that I kind of find distressing and concerning about this project, and I think you should find concerning about this proposal as well too. The first project is actually the only project that I'm in favor of. I am perfectly fine with increasing my sales tax, and I'm perfectly fine with paying a little more so that our fire and police departments can have better funding revenues, better funding streams, right? On top of the public safety measures, I am perfectly fine with increasing the sales tax to help at least partially alleviate the homelessness issue here in the city of Wichita. So Project 1, I'm for, and I think it's a good issue. The rest of the projects are really bad. In my opinion, they're so bad that they're basically bad enough to vote no on the bill, despite the fact that I am for the first project on this bill. Again, more funding in public safety initiatives. Going to the second proposal, the second project, this idea of revitalizing Century 2 and convention centers sounds nice, but we have to think about who benefits from this. And no, I'm not talking about like the construction companies who will be, getting the contracts to renovate and revitalize these convention centers in Century 2, but I mean the people who actually go to these events. You got to think is that everybody in the city is going to at some point be affected by the sales tax, but not everybody goes to Century 2 shows, performances. Not everybody goes to convention centers. Again, you got to think about low-income individuals. These people don't have the extra money to go and spend on, musical theater performances, to go out to the convention centers, right? Like these places cost money. And if you're low income, you're already stretching your dollar really thin. So why are we asking you to pay 1% more in sales tax to fund the revitalization projects that will end up benefiting mainly people who go to those projects, which isn't all the low-income people? So then you're just asking low-income people to basically pay more to give to other people who aren't them who to benefit, right? So you just got to think. The people who are taxed are not the same people who are benefiting from this. And that's actually going to be a pretty common theme as to why I don't want to vote for this bill specifically. Project 3. Now, Project 3, I wholeheartedly reject, mainly because we're raising taxes through the sales tax, but then we're lowering property taxes. why are we raising sales tax so much? Why not just raise sales tax a little less and then not give any property tax relief? You got to think about which groups this affects, this exchange affects, right? The increase in sales tax versus the decrease in property taxes. So there's actually really 4 groups of people that benefit and or don't benefit from this specific project or this proposal of property tax relief. The first group is going to be renters. Renters are people who do not own residential property, so again, they're not taxed. But if you're asking them to pay a higher sales tax, they're having to pay a higher tax, but they don't get any of that property tax relief. So people who rent, they're just out of luck. And that's basically the end of it. If you don't own property, you don't get any relief, but you still got to pay the sales tax. Group 2 is going to be small property owners. Think small homeowners, right? Homes valued between $100,000 to $200,000. These homeowners are still paying a higher sales tax. So yeah, they might get some property tax relief, but that property tax relief is not going to overcome the sales tax burden. So that means small property owners, the second group, they still get taxed more. Group 3, large residential property owners. Think, your standard McMansion. Homes that are valued at $600,000, $700,000 or more. These homes are going to get a large property tax relief. And you got to think is that the people who typically own these really large residential properties, they're not the ones who are going to be paying all their income to the sales tax. They're able to save a good deal of their money. Because again, in order to live in a very expensive home and pay the very expensive property taxes, you generally have to already be making a certain amount of money to pay for that. And again, I'm not talking about the retirees who are on a fixed income who live at a $150,000 home. I'm talking about people who make over 6 figures and live in a $600,000 to $1 million plus McMansions. That's who I'm talking about. Those people are going to be getting more property tax relief than they are a sales tax burden. Thereby, their net tax burden decreases. Finally, the fourth group is not going to be residential property owners, but actually commercial property owners. And this is actually where you start to see a little bit of the, the corruption that exists with this bill. So many of the people who are behind this bill, many of the companies and organizations behind this bill are companies and organizations that specifically pay property tax, okay? These are places that are going to specifically benefit from the lower property tax relief. But you, the non-property owners, are going to be the ones footing the bill. So remember that. The two groups, renters and small property owners, they don't benefit from this property tax relief. People who are large property owners and people who own commercial properties, they are going to be the ones receiving the most amount of relief. This is not a good project proposal, and it is frankly corrupt. The last project proposal, again, it's a new art center, so it's going to follow the same logic of why are we forcing low-income people to pay a higher sales tax, but they're not going to be the main recipients that go to these shows. Again, this is who is taxed and who benefits. Probably the biggest concern that I have about this bill was the fact that the proposal from Wichita Forward chose to do the March election date, to have a special election in March 2026 instead of pushing it to the November midterms later that year. It's my biggest concern because, well, A, I love democracy. And really, B, I love when democracy flourishes. And right now, American democracy doesn't flourish because people just don't show up to vote, okay? I mean, it aggravates me when I see special elections like the USD 259 special election for the bond that happened earlier this year, only got like a 20% voter turnout. When you compare that to the previous midterms over the past couple of decades, I mean, we're talking about double and then some the voter turnout during the midterms. So The excuse that was given by Wichita Forward, because I actually went to the informational meeting they had at the Advanced Learning Library, and I actually asked a question. And actually, the Wichita Eagle, they're a little the article about me. You can see me twiddling my hair in the background. I asked them the question: why are you choosing the March special election, which will have a lower voter turnout, versus the November midterms, which guaranteed will have a higher voter turnout? Their excuse was that they wanted to make this a Wichita-only election. They believed there would be too much voter fatigue if we put on another initiative on the November midterm elections. Basically, people wouldn't do the research, or they wouldn't be as informed. They wouldn't maybe go vote for this for some reason, despite the fact that, again, there's a higher turnout in the midterms as opposed to the special election. And again, if they're trying to make this a Wichita priority issue, why would you want, only 20% of Wichitans to vote for this as opposed to 50%? I'm going to say this out loud. It's because it's corrupt, right? This bill, which, again, the public safety part I am for, is bundled with 3 pretty evidently corrupt proposals. And it's just no. We shouldn't let this type of happen, okay? We shouldn't let politicians just openly let us bundle good stuff with obviously corrupt stuff. And when I say corrupt stuff, you got to remember, Wichita Forward is a coalition of business and community leaders, aka the aristocracy. So when the city council tries to tell you this is going to be a democratic vote, this is a part of democracy, it isn't. This vote is aristocracy disguised as democracy, okay? It's not the people that wrote this bill. It is a special interest group that specifically is going to gain from parts of this bill at the expense of other people, right? And hopefully this video has enlightened you about what the bill is, what it does and how it affects you, and why you should vote no on this bill. I think if you hold the same respect for democracy as I do, you would also vote down this proposal. And you would send a message to the city council that they can't do this in the future. At the beginning of this video, I introduced a quote: if a tree falls in the middle of the forest, no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, I want to riff off that quote. If there's an election and no one votes, will democracy make a sound when it dies?